Hi everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I am the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. Woo! Okay, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I barely got sleep last night. And, I'm just getting older and just waking up at say 5 in the morning. And stark awake, can't get back to sleep. That's apparently what life is like as you age. So, feeling under the weather. And you know what? Who wants a long introduction anyway? I'm very excited for this episode, though. This is Mike Deni. If you don't know who he is, let me read you his bio quick. Originally from New Jersey, Los Angeles-based musician Mike Deni, a.k.a. Geographer, has been writing music for most of his life, for over a decade as Geographer. In that time, he's released a number of EPs and albums, including Innocent Ghosts in 2008, Myth in 2012, and Ghost Modern in 2015. His latest EP, New Jersey, will be out March 22nd, and it is wonderful. But beyond his music, you know what? I think I say this in the episode, but Mike came through the door, and we were kind of instantly resonating on the same frequency. And we get along swimmingly. I think we're friends now, I want to say. And I don't mean that in a show busy way. I mean that in we recorded this episode and then we talked for another hour or more. Mike's a very cool dude. Like his music, like his personality. So, I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do enjoy this episode and you want to check out other episodes of Beginnings, they're all there on Spotify, and if you want to download them, they're on beginnings.libsyn.com, or the last 100 should be on your podcast app. I've talked to hundreds of writers and performers and musicians. Why don't I recommend a couple musicians, since Mike is a musician? Matt Sharp from Weezer and the Rentals has been on the show. Wes Miles of Rah Rah Riot, Mira from K Records, Mitski, Angel Daradorian of Dirty Projectors, Allison Crutchfield of Swearin', and Waxahachie's touring band, and a ton of other people. Why, the 400th episode was just a couple weeks ago, and that was Scott Thompson from The Kids in the Hall. So check out those eps. If you like what you hear and you want to subscribe to the show, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play, among other places. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. And that's about it. Thanks for listening. I'm going to go take a hot bath and go to sleep. And I hope you have a great day. But for now, let's talk to Mike. I woke up at 5 something in the morning for a couple hours.
Wow.
And fell back to sleep for a little bit. And then, if I am loopy or disconnected, I want to warn you. I want to warn the listener.
Great. I am warned. Listener, you are now warned too.
I'm talking with my hand. I'm doing Trump hands, which I don't mean to, but I don't know what. I feel like if I can't be expressive vocally, then maybe that I'm Jewish. Yeah. So I guess it comes out in the hands.
You're preaching to the converted. As an Italian man, I gesticulate very much.
Mike, I want to say this. When you first came into the house, instantly liked you.
Oh, same. But I knew I would like you before because I have listened to your voice. Maybe you've listened to my voice too.
Yes.
Yeah, so we came in being all right.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I don't know. Again, sometimes these get set up through publicists or something like that.
Yeah.
And I only like to invite people on the show who I like their work. So there is. So sometimes it can, if you there's a one-way directional arrow of of liking.
Because I'll go on any show.
But no, I like your music a lot. So
thank you.
And we were talking. I mean, I hate saying this because it's not. I don't want to talk about your music necessarily, but your new album is called New Jersey.
Yes.
And I'm from Pennsylvania.
Oh, cool.
A lot of my family is from New York. My aunt lived in northern New Jersey, East Rutherford, and I think Patterson at some point, Wayne, and so.
These are all much more famous towns than mine.
I know the area. I'm curious as to your thoughts about growing up in Jersey and how it formed you, because I there's something, and maybe more of a northern Jersey thing. Mm-hmm. So you can tell me how much you feel this or not. But like, it feels a little like chip on your shoulder being that close to New York for some people. Like Tom Sharpling, Chris Gethard, like a lot of people who are from Jersey who I feel like have a little bit of a like fuck you attitude. I'm going to do this
like,
on my
I don't
own.
need to live there.
Yeah.
You should live here. Yeah, I think that is true of northern New Jersey, because where I lived, it was uncool to go to New York. Like, we had a friend who would go to New York and buy like designer jeans, and we just made fun of him. We were like, what? Like, the mall's not good enough for you? Like, you don't like these jeans? We didn't talk like that, but but like, so I didn't even go to New York until I was like 16 and realized they would give you a beer there, you know? So I think we lived in this bizarre bubble, which I hated then, but value deeply now. Because I think the greatest gift you can give someone is a place that they want desperately to escape from, but that actually isn't that bad. You know, it's like, so they're not scarred by the place, because plenty of people have that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was the worst place in the world, but now when I go back and I visit, I'm just like, if I ever had children, which I won't, this is where I would raise them.
Yeah, that was Reading, Pennsylvania. Exactly the same kind of thing, where it's like, I had fun with my friends.
Yeah.
And it was not like, there wasn't anything awful about this place, but I would never want to live there as an adult.
Yeah. And the reason I named it New Jersey and the whole scope of it is that everyone comes from a place like New Jersey, in that, you know, I think it's the perfect title, because if you think of New Jersey, a lot of things come to mind, like freeways, Guidos, like just people with a chip on their shoulder, ugliness, you know. But New Jersey, yes, it has all those things, but it also has tremendous beauty. There's farmlands, and, you know, some of the most luminous human beings have come from there. So everyone's small town, to them, is everything, because it's like your life exists on the inside. So it doesn't matter where you're from. If you're from Manhattan or some place in Nebraska that no one's ever heard of, your life is just as rich. And that place is the protagonist in your life, you know? So it's like every place gives you as much as any other. It doesn't matter if it's big or small. So that's kind of one of the themes of the EP.
I try not to talk about process or things like this, but I am curious for a moment. When you have an idea for, I used to be in a band, and when I wrote lyrics let's just go with the lyrics. I would barely have an idea of something in mind. Mm-hmm. And the lyrics, and it was more that I was probably like emotionally unconnected. Right. Or I was trying to hide my emotions because I'm very repressed. And so if I could, it was very like Pavement-like, the lyrics.
Right.
And if I could bury the emotion underneath layers of avant-garde poetry, almost
street poetry, just
then no one could know what I was like actually feeling. But at the core of it was a feeling usually, or something I experienced. Yeah. Do you have because that was a very like well thought out kind of thesis. Was that there? Do you have a well thought out thesis when you write something, or is it more that you've written it and now you're trying to justify it afterwards and come up with some idea?
That has happened in the past, where you're just like, all right, so I have this collection of songs, now I need a time together. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I sit down, you know, and think, okay, today I'm going to write a 7-song album, each of which touches on a different facet of this idea. Usually the idea grows organically out of like 1 or 2 songs, and I'll write maybe 20 to 30 songs for each release, but then as I'm writing them, I'll choose the ones that fit together.
Oh, okay.
So then they will sort of guide what the scope is, and then once I see like a little light in the distance, I'll go to it, and then I'll see how bright it is, and then maybe I'll light another fire right next to it. It's like that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I like that a lot. My Naomi is putting together her first hour of stand-up.
Oh, cool.
And I'm watching her like try to figure out like how, like, I guess like, jokes and bits and chunks are like that.
Right.
Where, you see her trying to figure out thematically how things are going to fit together. And then this joke might be good, but I don't think it fits thematically in with this as a full, artistic object.
Right.
An hour of stand-up, like an album is a full artistic object.
Yeah. And it's funny because especially with music, it doesn't really matter, to anyone but the person who created it, really. 'Cause it's like, if you look at, I just watched Bohemian Rhapsody, so I'm on Queen now. But if you look at a Queen record, like the one with Killer Queen on it, I think that's the only standout track from that record. Maybe there's another one, but it doesn't have to have anything to do with the rest of the music. It just has to be good. You just have to have one good song, like incredible song on your record. So no one really cares, but I think when they, as the record ages and people age with it, then they'll learn to appreciate, like Born to Run is a perfect example, because all it needed was Born to Run on it, but then that was such a palpable idea that it's like, all right, now we're making a whole world of this like protagonist who goes across into New York City for a deal gone bad, or like has a girlfriend that he loves, and it kind of builds out the story. But it doesn't, I don't know, sometimes I do feel like the only person that cares is me.
I mean, it's interesting. I have a tendency, and this is probably just out of pure narcissism, to think that other people consume art in the same way that I do.
Right.
And to me, a good song doesn't make an album. And in fact, one good song I probably will listen to a little bit, and then I won't. I'll it'll sit on a hard drive somewhere, and maybe I'll rediscover it once before I die, but it's just sitting there with a bunch of other things. But like a good album I will return to.
Yeah.
And it might have like, I've been listening, I don't know if you like Hop Along, but I've been listening to their new album a lot.
I like them, but not a like avid listener.
And there's one song on there that's killer that I keep listening to over and over again, but the rest of the album is also great. So it's not just that one song that draws me in, it's the whole thing together.
Yeah.
That and that's how I consume a lot of stuff, where I'm like, if the full thing that they wanted to do, but I think a lot of people just listen to a song and then they put it on a playlist.
Yeah, the thing is I think about that a lot too, and I say things like I just said without having any knowledge of it, but I don't know what most people do or think about. Like I don't spend that much time with lots of people, and I only know, it's like, I guess you shouldn't really think about it at a certain point, right? Like you should just make what you want to make. That's the artistic ideal. But then you get into this business, especially your business, where it really is about, it can't be abstract, and you really don't get many chances to falter, right? It's like, what are the ratings? Are they good? Okay.
Well, if you're a white man, you get a lot of chances. But
oh, well, sure, yes. But I mean, with your product, it's like, you can't think of it as a product, but at the end of the day, it is. And I do think that can muddle the creative process and make you make mistakes, because the ideal is artist locked in a room speaking, like just transferring the inner to the page or something,
I wonder, you grew up, you as in everyone, and again, I'm out of narcissism, I'm assuming we all have the same rough curriculum.
Everyone's like you and me, I think that's safe to assume.
You grew up with this idea of there being this pure act of creation. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if even like when I think back to like whoever the creative people are that you learn about, Charles Dickens, whatever, I wonder how much of that, I mean, weren't half of his books serialized in the newspaper? Yeah, so like how much of that is a pure act of where you want to think that there's no kind of commercial, even back in the 1700s, the 1600s, that these are somehow pure acts of creation. Yeah. When I don't know wherever they are. where I don't know if there ever was this kind of mythical idea of almost like a romantic poetry, like that kind of thing.
Right.
I guess that's what we're talking about, the romantic artist.
Yeah, that is kind of a myth, right? Of the artist who only does what he or she wants, and thinks nothing about how it will be received. It's like, yeah, because the art that's lasted has always been linked to commerce, because that's the world we live in. Like Shakespeare, all those choices he made were to please different people in the audience, whether they were the lower classes or the people actually allowing him to write the plays. He had to please them all. And obviously you like sneak in little bits of artisticness, which is a word, but also Mozart, people like that, they were allowed to make music because it pleased the court. And whoever was the king was like, yo, that's dope. And then was like, I'll give you money to do that. So, yeah, I don't know why we have that myth of the artist, And then whenever you hear about a giant artist, you always hear how depressed they are and how they're just like, yeah. I mean, I did put out an album called Myth, which was about a lot of this. But it is interesting that in this day and age, we still do that stuff. We're so into being totally hyper real, with a lot of the things that we do make. But then we just love things that aren't real.
Well, you're a little younger than me, but so I don't know if this will hit you in the exact same way it hit me. But I'm not Gen X really, but I got enough shine off of Gen X to get some of the there was this in the 90s there was this such I'm like grasping the air because it's more than desire. It was like a desperate need for authenticity, and a desperate need for not selling out.
Right.
And I remember when I was watching, I think it was a Volkswagen commercial, and there was a Yo La Tango song in there, and I was like, and that was the first time I was like, wait, but I thought they were supposed to be authentic in this capital letter authentic way. But why are they doing that? And then you're like, because they need to fucking make a living. Do you like their music? Yes. Yeah. That doesn't pay their bills. So you want them to keep making music like that? Let them sell a commercial to Volkswagen.
Exactly. That's really funny because I grew up in the 90s, and if a band put a song in a commercial, you were done with them. But now, when I get a song in a commercial, I feel like my fans rejoice because they're just like, oh, this is fun. I have to watch horrible commercials and now I get to listen to a Geographer song. But for me, it's like how I keep doing, just like you said, what people want me to do. And I think they've come around to that. But it also is kind of bad. I almost prefer, I prefer people paying you for what you do and then not having to find other ways around it. But I also think in the 90s, that's when people discovered that corporations were evil, right? It's like we didn't really know that. There was Dow Chemical and making napalm, in the 70s. That's not good. But I think that was the time that people looked at advertisements and things and thought, wait, this product isn't for me. They're trying to change me to need the product, and that's evil, And now we've just given in. It's like everything else. It's like streaming. We just gave in.
Well, is it giving in, or was it just that there's no other choice, and so you fight against it at the same time that you still have to make a living? Like I remember just yesterday, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was saying how everyone's criticizing her for driving a car while she's trying to get the Green New Deal going, and she's like, "What do you?" I'm sorry, how do you want me to live my life? How do you want me to actually move? Or she made a joke on Twitter where she's like, look, I wrote on paper. I guess I don't really mean that this Green New Deal.
Right.
And it's just like, well, I think there's, and maybe this is different for you, but I can fight against some of the stuff that I think is horrific at the same time that I make certain choices to work in a certain industry. But also I minimize the kind of the other podcast I do with Naomi, there's sponsors on it. And one of the reasons that I choose not to have sponsors on this is so I don't have to make these decisions at all.
Right.
And so I can do exactly what I want. But on the other one, we have to choose. And sometimes, and it takes a long time for me to sit there and do research to see if the company is bad or not,
Right.
or if the product is bad or not. And sometimes it's like a crapshoot where I'm just like, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be a lot of research. It doesn't seem bad. Do I really want to associate myself with this thing? I guess it doesn't seem bad, but then who knows? Like it's you don't know what's going to happen.
You never know. Yeah, it's so hard to live a I am unassociated with bad things life. Like even the things you eat, the clothes you wear, and I just gave up. I was just like, listen, I gotta wear clothes. I gotta eat. I'm gonna eat what I want. But yeah, it's funny people doing that about the car because they used that with it was either I think it was Al Gore. They were like he's flying in a plane and to tell us about climate change. Oh, look at the carbon footprint. And it's like, well, that's the system that's in place, and he's trying to change the system. So he has to work within that system to change it. And that is confusing, but I think that's all you can do. But yeah, it's very easy to get extremely disheartened.
It seems like also on the one side, there is this misunderstanding or just a complete non-understanding of systems, because what it really is that the system itself has the system that allows for all this waste, if we're talking about climate change, right, is the thing that has to change, not individual actions. Individual actions won't make much of a difference at the end of the day, whereas, but you do want to minimize certain things. You don't want, like, that doesn't mean just throw your trash on your lawn or whatever.
Right.
Just so we're clear. I'm not advocating for you to make terrible choices in your life because it gets canceled out.
Well, that kind of, it just speaks to like what is the strength and power of an individual, right? It's like people think about that a lot with votes because one vote, everybody does one vote, and then that makes many votes, But I do think it speaks to the human condition of like, I'm just one. What am I? What can I do? Do I have impact? Why are we here? And I think people don't like to think about that stuff, and I think it subconsciously reminds them of that.
So what we were talking, one of the things I was thinking of was I'll ask you this. Are you comfortable with the commercial aspects of art? And if so, is that rooted in your childhood? Mm-hmm. Did you grow up around businesses? Were your parents in business? Did they sell things? I've never been comfortable. I say this as someone who's never been very comfortable with the commercial aspects.
Right. I think if I had a choice, I would just get like $60,000 a year, just blanket, and then I would do exactly the same things that I do, Like I have no interest in making tons of money. The only thing I want to do is make music and have it be appreciated. Because that's the thing is I don't want to make music that nobody likes, but I also don't want to change the music that I make so that it is liked. And that's, you just have to sort of cross your fingers if that's the way you want to live. I guess that came from maybe, I don't know what that came from, because when I grew up listening to like Crosby, Stills and Nash and James Taylor and Cat Stevens, Simon and Garfunkel, these people really feel genuine. Yeah. It feels like they just lucked out. That what they wanted to make just happened to be the most enthralling sounds to the people in the time that they were making it. So maybe it was a little idealistic, but yeah, to answer your question though, my my dad was a professor, and my mom worked also in sort of like the school district. She was like a special ed, gosh, I don't even know the title, but one below the superintendent of the special ed school district.
I was going to say assistant superintendent. That's not it. There is something. I'm trying to think of what Mom. It is. But wait.
But so they were both. I mean, I guess they were both teachers. Like my mom started out as a teacher of kids with special needs, and then rose up the ranks, and eventually was an administrator for the county. So she was going from school to school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then my dad was just a scientist. Like he would do experiments on mice, and that was like a huge part of my childhood. Was going to his mouse lab, and to the extent that he would put my sister and I in a big white bin on wheels, and then just drop 2 baby mice in there with us, and then we would just like let them crawl on us and like play with them for like an hour, and then he'd be like, "All right, I'm done. Let's go." We'd be like, okay. And then that was my first job, was like cleaning out the shit from the cages. I know it sounds really odd, but
my first, I still carry a little bit of resentment about this, but my first science fair experiment in 7th grade was I had 4 rats. And I got a Skinner box from the local psychology department at Albright College, and I ran.
Is that like an operant chamber?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And I ran. Yeah, exactly. It's not. Not. There was no shocking or anything like that. It was all like positive reinforcement. So they could hit a lever and get some pellets, and some of them didn't get pellets, and then you saw whether they learned how to hit the thing or not. And I did not win that year, and the science teachers, I want to say excuse was that it should have been on hundreds of rats as opposed to like 4 or whatever a 7th grader.
That's a classic.
Whatever a 12-year-old
experiment.
Yeah. How? What other 12-year-olds?
Textbook experiment.
How many other 12-year-olds are out there learning B.F. Skinner?
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So wait, is that what your dad was? I mean, obviously not that level, but like...
No, so the interesting thing about him was that he lived a very small life. Like the experiments that he did, so he was a biopsychologist. The experiments that he did had no impact on the world at large. You know, like he didn't even publish after a certain point. And he worked at a university. Well, it used to be a college then, and it was really small. And I always had these humongous dreams, right? And I would look at my dad's life, and the older I got, I was just like, why don't you're so smart. Like he would build the machines that he needed for his experiments. And I'm just like, why don't you do this at like a good school? You know, that's the way my mind thought about it then, that there was good and bad schools, you know, and he just said, I don't, you know, this is where I live. I don't want to. And it was just like, so he had this very insular way of looking at life. Like he had his children who he loved, and he liked doing experiments. It didn't matter what effect they had. And he liked teaching students. It didn't matter what they went on to do. It mattered if he was able to teach them or not. So I think there was a little bit of like joy of craft that was maybe instilled in me, you know? But then somehow I did also have humongous goals, and I guess the self-confidence to think, well, I don't know what it was that made me think I could achieve them. But it's kind of funny because there was a huge dichotomy in me of like, I felt like a total loser, and I was like a dork and, you know, very unappreciated for superficial things like the clothes I wore or my face. And just, I wasn't popular. I was allowed to talk to popular people, you know?
Yeah. No, I was in the same strata.
Yeah. And then at the same time, somehow I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to be a musician. Like I'm going to be a famous musician. And it wasn't like, I didn't want anything from it. It was just sort of like, well, that's what I should do. That's what I'm meant to do, and I'm going to do it. And I don't really know how I had that confidence. I guess it was, well, maybe it was because the one thing I was good at and was lauded for was playing the saxophone or singing when I was growing up. Like I sucked at sports. Like, my God, like I would score goals on my soccer team. You know what I mean? And what a bad feeling where you're like, oh, I finally scored a goal. And then you're like, oh my God, I did the worst. Like it's the worst.
Wait, does that actually count for the other team?
I don't know when you're 6, but I hope so. I think it should. But yeah, so then when I picked up the saxophone and I was the best, I think that just became my identity. Like I was just like, I'm not even going to try to play sports anymore because I hate the way it makes me feel to fail, you know, and to fail publicly. But then I had this other thing where I could succeed publicly, and I would like play a jazz solo because we had a thing called One Night Stand, which is odd, but you know, it also means just playing one concert. And we did that and the whole school would be there. And I would think in my mind, that was an amazing solo. Tomorrow, everybody's going to congratulate me in the hallways.
Oh my God.
And no one did.
I still think that, I'll have like a good live show, or I'll tape a great episode of this or my other podcast or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, everything's going to change.
Yeah, this is it.
You get some nice comments.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's it. Like the world doesn't change. Nothing is that different.
Yeah. I still feel that way. I really do. Like when I finish a song that I think is remarkable, I'll just think in my head, okay, this is it. You did it, man. Hello world. And no matter how many times it doesn't happen that way, I still manage to feel that way about it. You know, it's like I guess there's something about me where I can take a punch on the nose and just jump right back in the ring. It's weird.
Do you think your ambition was in some way just a knee-jerk reaction to your father? Because I think about like how I had a knee-jerk reaction to my parents' life in suburbia. And I was just like, I don't want this. And it turns out I don't want that as an adult, and I make actual choices.
Yeah.
I can say, oh, no, I really did not want. I don't want to really have that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I think when I was a teenager, it was just a knee-jerk reaction. Like, I want to get out of here.
Yeah. Like, this is the death of the spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. But do you think it's some way...
Again, sorry, Mom.
There was a reaction to you, like... Because the way that you painted your father, it seems like a positive picture. Like, you know, in the same way that my parents have a very nice life in suburban Pennsylvania, and they have good friends, and their life is meaningful to them, you know, and your father's life working with his students and working in his lab was meaningful to him. But there's just something where, like, there's something in you that just like gets set up at some point in your early life where you're like, oh, I couldn't live in writing. I couldn't live in the suburbs. I felt like there was something else I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think it's like I was always obsessed with what else there was. And I think it came maybe more from what I wasn't allowed to experience, maybe. Like if I was embraced by the suburban community, you know, where it was like, Mike, come play stickball with us. Mike, come date like the cheerleader. You know, maybe I would have been like, yeah, this is great. But I was just deprived of all high school joys, you know?
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why I looked out. Like my family is Italian by descent, but nobody speaks Italian. And my mom's side of the family, because my great-grandmother was essentially enslaved by her family in Italy, or so I've been told, and escaped and was like, Italy is the worst place. Never talk about it. I don't want to hear Italian in this house, even though she only really spoke Italian. I think she tried to just speak English. So the kids basically severed all ties with their Italian roots.
Sorry, what? She was she was enslaved?
I mean, she was treated like a slave in her family house. This is like what I have heard from my family. And she escaped. She like ran away to America from northern, like the sticks in northern Italy, close to the Alps. And she managed to escape, which is pretty incredible. But then she was just like, Italy, no, Italy bad. But then when I was growing up, I was obsessed with roots. You know, I'm Italian. What does that mean? Mom, you've never gone to Italy? Why haven't you even wanted to go to Italy? Like, what's wrong with you? You know, why don't you want to know? And then in college, I studied Italian, and then that became like a big part of my identity. So I think there was always something about like, what else is there? You know, I think it does come from maybe a lack, like a feeling of emptiness, which I certainly feel, you know? And that's the problem, is that if you have that emptiness, it's unfillable.
Yeah. It really is.
So like I look at my mom's life now and then, like she is just the queen of suburbia. Like she has such advanced social skills. Like she's like, oh, I just went over and brought him cookies, and like, yeah, oh sure, yeah, the kids came over, and I'm just like, people just knock on your door? Like I wouldn't dare. Like I was scared to even ring your doorbell. You invited me here. So it's like, it's such an idyllic, you know, place, but maybe, I don't know, maybe recognizing my own social anxiety and all the other places, I would fail there. Yeah. I'd be a misanthrope there, you know? It's
okay. I don't know how it works, and it probably works differently for different people, but I'm wondering how much of like, there's like a seed of otherness in us for whatever reason. And I wonder if it is just like you gravitate towards different interests, and that stuff starts reinforcing itself and reinforcing. And the more you get into those things, the more that pushes you apart. Like the very original seed for me was being Jewish in a very Christian area.
Yeah.
And then other little things like liking Weird Al and stuff like that.
Didn't everybody?
I don't think so.
You and me.
I don't think so. I started like when people started to like, in the 90s, I was thinking about this because I'm like, I like a lot of hip hop, but like I didn't like it initially because when it was introduced to me, it was either like Run DMC, which I'm all right. Or it was like gangster rap. It was like Snoop and Dr. Dre and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know know anything about California, let alone
killing people.
Yeah. And so it's and so like when everyone's like at the school dance and I'm just waiting for them to play one Pearl Jam song, they would play one Pearl Jam song, one Red Hot Chili Pepper song, one Nirvana song, and the rest was like 90s R&B.
Yeah.
And then like Snoop. And
so they're showing you this is what you should like.
Yes.
And you don't.
Yes.
So there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. And so that starts to even push you away further from that. And so I wonder like how much like those desires for like leaving, again, I guess it really is those desires to like get out of here and find people who whatever like the same music you like.
Right.
I know it's how trivial that is in terms of like otherness.
Yeah.
But like, and the same way, like if you're gay and you're growing up in a super homophobic or area, how like that's the like. I'm not trying to like say that growing up
that our struggle in suburbia,
our struggle to find other people who like super chunk is the same thing, but it's on some kind of like spectrum of like stuff that pushes you away from other people, and where that like that want or again that emptiness forms in that space. Well,
it does. The radio was a big thing for me growing up. It was like these are the songs. It wasn't like I didn't go crate diving when I was a kid. I was just like, oh, these are the songs, techno. And in what it meant then, like la da da dee da 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 da, like that, those kinds of songs. And I was just like, well, this is garbage, and I hate it. But it's what everyone listens to, and it's what I'm kind of listening to. And that makes you feel strange, because again, you're like, there's something wrong with me if I don't like what I'm supposed to like, if you don't like the food that someone's preparing you. And then when I did go to college, I thought, okay, this is my chance. All the things that I have struggled against, like I don't like what people talk about at the lunch table, or, I'm interested in dating someone who is intellectual, or I want people who, read books or like music from the 70s. And then when I went to college, I was kind of disappointed to find that it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you still have to find your people, and then you have to make an effort to find your people. But I didn't understand that until it was too late. It's like you have to join the club of the thing that you like, because that's where the people go. But I was just sort of like waiting in my room, doing my thing, listening to Kid A, and like doing ridiculous art projects where I'll like cover a paper with pastels and lay down on it because that's like, me, and I was like, why don't I have any friends? So I was deeply disappointed to find that there were jocks at school, and the same dynamics were still going on. And it wasn't really until my senior year that I found really just one friend, and who was totally like me, utterly like me, same sense of humor, same music, same sort of hatred of life, but zest for life at the same time. So I think I do think like every little failure in high school was clocked by me, and I wanted to succeed so badly, but I think, by the time I got to college, I don't even know if I knew how until I started a band. Like that was my first band, was senior year of college. And then I was like, oh,
yeah,
I'm special now.
Yeah. No, I get that. Did you feel, I'm trying to figure out if this is still a component, but I wonder if there was ever for me like a molecule of resentment also in there, where it was, oh, I'm going to show you that I'm not just weird, that I'm special.
Right. Yeah. I'm not just annoying. I am I'm annoying and I can sing to you. Yeah, it's because you do feel special, right? Like, and I hope that lots of people do, but I know that I felt very special. Like I felt like there was something that I had that should be shared, right? But we also grew up in the generation where it was like self-esteem was like a huge thing, right? It's like I remember having guidance counselors come to my high school to talk about self-esteem and like everyone's special, you know? That was like a thing in the 90s. And it's, I mean, everyone can't be special because then nobody's special, right? If everyone's the same, then that's what special means is aberrant in a delightful way, right? But I also think you don't understand when you're younger that you have to be weird to be special. You have to stand out. It's like if I had known about David Bowie when I was 15, maybe I would have thought like very differently. But I had a lot of examples of unapologetic iconoclasts in my high school life. Like my sister and her best friend would wear the most outlandish clothing, but not in like a stylish way. It was just like the ugliest, most cacophonous stuff. And they did it sort of to say, I'm not going to play by your rules. I don't want to be popular. I don't want to make out with like a hot guy. I want to just be me and like enjoy the things that I like. So I think I did have that example too of like, you shouldn't care what people think, but I do. You know, so it was like that was to aspire to, but I also don't know if you can be David Bowie without caring what people think. You know, like it takes a lot of courage, but also you have to want to be adored to do that because it comes with an enormous price, right? So you have to want to pay that price.
I have this, I don't even know how to characterize this, but I see people in comedy who are true weirdos and who have gotten some measure of success because there is, at least in comedy and entertainment, there's like an apparatus, like a manager, or there's people who can like, well, I know what to do with this,
right?
So I can help you. But then there's other people who have dressed themselves in the clothing of weirdness. And really, they're just sociopaths or something that have figured out, like, oh, well, this is one road to success, and there are, and it's the real weirdos. Like, I wonder how weird David Bowie to become that huge. Is it just a circumstance of history? Is it just that he happened to be at a certain time, and there was an opening in culture for him,
right?
Or was it, because I think about how weird he was, and like when I was a kid, David Bowie is just like some guy that was like on tour with Nine Inch Nails or whatever,
right?
And I didn't give a shit about
an old
him.
Man on tour with Nine Inch Nails.
Like We're Afraid of Americans. What's that song? Whatever that song is, Americans. Like I'm just like, this sucks. Right. But then I get older and I find, you know, all the stuff from the 70s, like Hunky Dory and all that stuff. I'm just like, holy shit, this guy was amazing. And he was huge.
Right. And
it's stuff like that like, I'm like how weird is he? How accepting was culture? It's just, I guess that I think of things in terms of like, how does, I'm shaping my hands as like a blob or something.
It's
like
helping
how
me
does
to understand.
Culture like open up to allow these people, or were these people, are they really weirdos? Are they like, and then if they are, like, I'm kind of a weirdo, but I have enough self-awareness to know where I fit in. And I'm like, does that hamper me, that self-awareness? Does that should I be more cynical and sociopathic?
Definitely, dude.
But like someone like Bowie is just like, did he just like,
yeah, did he do it in a vacuum, or was he aware? I think with Bowie, he was very aware. Like, he was sort of an incisive presence in his own life, it seems, because he made the choice to ditch all of his success as soon as he achieved it. Like, most people would have been Ziggy Stardust for the rest of their careers, but he was like, guess what, everybody? in like an awesome band, you're fired. And now I'm going to do a totally different thing. But that also happened to be incredible. And then he did it again and again. So I think it's like, if you're going to do that, you have to truly be great. And the thing that's hardest for creative people to swallow is that there are some people that are just fantastic. They're born fantastic. They're the most special people that there will be for 100 years. And you probably aren't one of them. You know, it's like, right? Like for me, Paul Simon, David Bowie, Bruce Springsteen, like these people are just special people. You just want to love them. You know, especially if you take the example of Bruce Springsteen, because a lot of people don't like him because he is a little bit silly, right? You're just like, he's avuncular sometimes, you know, but like I and so many people, you just love him. You look at him and you're like, yes, that man, lead me, show me something, tell me something. And not everyone has that quality. Like no matter how good you are at what you're doing, if you don't have that quality, you can't be one of those people. And I think that's just very disturbing because everybody wants to think like, oh, I put in my 10,000 hours, maybe I can be that. And you also never want to be last to the party of I suck, you know?
Maybe it's there's some specific combination. Maybe it's not just weird, it's charismatic weirdos. And those are the ones that can somehow shape culture to that. Maybe Bowie is one of these people,
right?
Who could, because when I think of Paul Simon, I don't think of him as a weirdo at all. I think of him almost as like
super normal dude,
like typifying that. Like when I listen to Simon and Garfunkel, or when I listen to his solo stuff, I think of him like there's something that's so like specific about him that it's like it's the apotheosis of the 60s or the 70s in some way.
Right. Like he was in a lot of times in his career, it seemed like he was done. You know, it was like folk rock, great, got it, nailed it. But then rock and roll came out, and Jimi Hendrix happened at the same time that he was releasing like, I don't know, Mrs. Robinson or something like that. And he got written about a lot for not being on the pulse of what was happening and for being kind of lame and too gentle. But he was just like, screw you, man. I'm just going to make this beautiful music. Yeah, I mean, I do think, especially in comedy, it seems like you have to be comfortable being the weirdo in people's eyes. Like it's like, and that's different than music, or at least for me, like I feel like in music, you have to be cool. You have to be larger than life. You can't be a joke, you know? But to stand out, you do have to have facets of that are able to be parodied, right? Like the biggest artists in the world are the easiest ones to parody. Prince, Neil Young, Bruce Springsteen, like these are great impressions that you can do, you know? And I think I am uncomfortable with that. Like I don't want anyone to make fun of me, you know? And sometimes I wonder if that holds me back from unleashing my true self, you know? Because I admire people that are comfortable being the brunt of a joke, but also knowing that comes from the fact that they are just standing out and that they're a little above, you know, the like canopy of the trees. And so people are like, look at that guy, he's taller than everybody else, what a loser. But also like, wow, I wonder what it's like up there.
Tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
In New Zealand. Yeah. Okay. When you were growing up, was it when you were in a band your senior year of college? Was that, because when I moved to New York and started doing comedy, that's when finally I'm like, oh, okay, all this stuff makes sense. Was that the moment when everything started to make sense for you? Or when you were growing up, did you already have that kind of in you in a little bit, and you knew that eventually if you were to become a musician, because you said earlier that you're like, I want to be a musician. Yeah. You kind of had this knowledge from early on that that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, so I was just instilled with an incredible belief in myself from my parents. Like they just appreciated everything I did so much. Like my dad would come down to the basement when I would be recording some terrible song, like atrocious song. And he'd just be like, I love this. And he was serious. He really loved it. And then my mom no one ever said don't be a musician, you know? They were always like, yeah, follow your dreams, you know? And like, oh, you can basically, like, you can do anything. And then that, coupled with all the failures that I had, made me want to make music. But then when I did make music, I was bad at it because I had too much of like a belief in myself. There was no self-criticism or self-editing. So all my songs were really bad, even in college. It was just sort of this continuation of like, oh, you just set your mind to something and you do it. This is what I want to do, so I'm going to be good. And it wasn't until, well, I don't know what made me start doing that, but I think at a certain point, so after college, I think, because in college there were 2 bands on campus, and I was one of them. You know, I went to a really small school, Middlebury. It's like 2,200 people in the middle of nowhere in Vermont. There was one rock band that was like a Strokes analog, and they were really cool. And then there was my band, which was sort of an emo band. I would scream in it, if you can believe that. And we were just instantly popular because, you know, it's like if the other band is not playing a show and I am, everybody comes to that. So that sort of reinforced my false reality of I am good. Then when I left college, and it was time, that's when it's time to start life, right? Because everything up until then is preparation. And then it was like, okay, now I have to start life. And you're released into the world. You're outside of this system of college where people don't want to make you feel bad and they want to encourage you, you know, and they want your money. And so they'll tell you, you know, it's weird. But then I was like, wait, nobody likes my music, you know, like out here in the world. And then I just hunkered down and would just tear my songs apart until they were good. And then that's when I started to actually write good songs, where it was like, where I actually was like, okay, maybe I'm not as good at this as I think, but I want to be desperately, you know?
So good is some kind of middle ground between your own creative beliefs and what an audience that you, let's say an audience that you respect,
yes,
wants.
Right.
Can that, because I'm trying to think, because like if you don't, you're not making, no one's making art in a vacuum. I mean, maybe Emily Dickinson or whoever.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we did ask at the beginning.
I asked you, Squee, if you want to be there. Maybe Emily Dickinson is making art in a vacuum, but then I don't. Maybe she wants someone to discover it at some point. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, who knows what
right.
an outsider artist is thinking necessarily? But maybe, but for anyone who's making art to be consumed in some way. Mm-hmm. I wonder if there's like the idea of something being good is a middle ground between that. I don't know. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I think even if it's an imaginary audience, and that's what I hold my songs up to now, is like there's an audience inside me that knows. Like I know when it's just not happening. Like because I can pound a song to death and just like rework it, but sometimes it should just be killed. And I think it's very hard to do that.
Yeah, it is.
But I think once I wrote one good song, that was like all I needed because I knew it was a good song. And then at the same time, I knew all the other songs were bad because I had thought that they were fantastic. But it was kind of like, okay, this is the new standard. Is this feeling inside me? It's like a opening of everything.
Totally.
Yeah. So you know when the ice is on it. You know when it's not right. And the more you trust yourself to be able to produce another good song, because that's the scary part. It's like, I did one good thing. Can I do it again? You know, because you want to do it for your whole life. I think that's when a person becomes an artist, is not just unbridled creation, but the ability to self-edit and critique when necessary. Because that was always something that was taught to me, because I studied creative writing in college. I wanted to be a novelist. But I had to decide that I sucked at it.
Yeah, no, that I think that's really important. There was a point, look, let's say 5-6 years ago, when I could have gone the direction of performance. Mm-hmm. Like I was good at improv,
right?
And I wrote good sketches, but I was never vital. I mean, I could have gone in that direction and maybe through sheer force of will,
right,
and practice, just
made it happen. Yeah,
I could. I mean, there's something enough there that maybe, but would it have I actually, or would I have just been like another weird white dude? Versus, I think I have a real voice writing scripts. I think there is something that and I put a lot of hard work into that.
Yeah.
But I made that decision.
Right.
That in one direction and in the other direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe what you're talking about. Like knowing what you're not good at or what maybe you might never be great at.
Right. Because you could be good at it. Right.
Yeah.
You could. And it was the exact same thing with novel writing. Like I was like, all right, I'm obviously a good writer. Right. Like when I touch my fingers to a computer, something nice comes out. But I have no concept of like character development. And I actually don't have any reason to write a book. I have no reason to express myself in this medium other than I'm infatuated with the idea of being a novelist, And I think you have to temper your desires and rein them into what you're actually meant to do. And I don't mean that in a cosmic way. I just mean like with the skills that you have, and pretty much, I mean, you can develop new skills, but I feel like your whole life is preparing for what you'll be, right? So then by the time you leave college, maybe you have a couple years out in the world, you know what you're good at, and it's very hard to decide to give up on a dream. But you even see famous people doing that too. Like they're like a great guitarist in a band will be like, yeah, I'm going to make a solo record. I'm going to be Mick Jagger. And they can't. Yeah. And they shouldn't be, but they're an incredible Keith Richards. And I think that's a very difficult choice for a person to make.
Oof. Yes. What are thinking about these, like there are certain openings in culture. If culture is this blob that I'm shaping with my hands, where are the spaces for you to be great in there? And it might not be, I think this is the difficult thing. And maybe this is the first real step on either like knowing yourself as an artist. I don't mean to sound so hippy dippy, but like there is something of that, like knowing yourself, but like existentially knowing yourself in a real way is being able to like be honest with yourself about what you can do.
Yeah, which is such a tough thing to do because there's so many people telling you that you're not good at the thing that you are good at, or that you're great at the thing that you're not good at. It's just so hard to know what to do, which is why I think a lot of people just fall into it. They're like, oh, I was working as an actor and a musician, and then I just got these acting gigs, so I just gave up the band. And, now we play some shows every once in a while, but it's just not good, But it is interesting. We all want to be each other, right? Like, I want to be like a comedian or an actor, right? And like a lot of actors want to be musicians. There's just something, we don't know what each other's grind is like, right? Like, you're just like, oh man, it's a lot of waiting around, if you're an actor, or it's like, dude, you got to be on the road all the time and you can't really have a family and you're never going to be happy if you're a musician.
It's also, I mean, like again, 10 years ago or more, I'm like, well, I'm a writer. Right. And I think that's what I really am good at.
Yeah.
And then I worked hard to make it good. Versus, I wonder if the person who like fell into acting, they had to have some kind of like predisposition.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think comedy is difficult. If you weren't funny as a kid, I think it's really difficult to be funny as an adult.
Oh yeah. You gotta be, if you
didn't goof around with your friends and learn the kind of like the basics of like heightening and things like the very like basic skills that you need to do comedy, timing and heightening are like the two basic skills.
Yeah.
If you didn't learn that as a kid,
yeah, you cannot teach people to be funny.
But maybe a musician it's easier. Like think about like someone like John Wurster, who's like an amazing drummer.
Yeah,
and is also a really funny comedian. Well, he already has timing. He knows timing.
Yeah.
Like he feels the timing in his body.
Right.
So he can. It's not seamless. Not every drummer is going to be a funny person, but there is something probably in them.
Yeah. And people can be really good at many things. There is a Donald Glover, right? And so then that's more fuel for the fire of people wasting their time thinking, oh, well, maybe I can do this, But yeah, I think the choice, so your choice was between performing and writing, but for me, it was sort of between maybe I can be like a pop star or like, no, I'm meant to just make indie music, even though that's not something that's even really made anymore. It's like I have to write a song that means something to me. I can't write a song that I just think is really catchy. I could write it, but I'd have to give it to someone else. Like the vessel of delivery is very important, because you could be saying hilarious things as a performer, but there's just something about if someone else was saying them, that person, they want that person to say it, and you're like, but I came up with it,
Yeah.
Can't it be me?
I mean, I think, again, you tell me this, but like the way that you grew up, the way I grew up, I don't think I was ever on the path to be, as much as I would love the emptiness inside, would love the adoration of every human on earth.
Right.
I had to like reckon with myself at some point. Yeah. I don't appeal to as a person. Maybe my writing in the mouths of other people might appeal to more people on earth.
Yeah.
But this anxious Jew has a cap on his audience.
Right. Yeah.
And and like understanding that somewhere in my 30s was I'm like, oh, okay, I think I get this.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like giving up just enough. You have to give up just enough and the right thing. It's not about not believing in yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the thing that separates or that makes pop stars impressive to me and that makes them able to be pop stars is their ability to shoulder people's adoration. Right? Yeah. It's like Dua Lipa wears it like a custom-made Gucci like shift. It's just like she's like, yeah, I should be adored. I'm not egotistical about it, but it's like I think when I walk into a room, I think everyone's going to dislike me. There's a sneaking suspicion that some of them will like me, just like empirically, I know that.
Yeah.
That I'm not like despicable, but my truest feeling, if I really were to pay attention, is that no one's going to like me. And that's a weird way to walk out on stage, that can get you seeking the approval of applause, right? But I don't think it can only take you so far. I think if you're going to hold the attention of a stadium, you need to believe that you're a god. It's like you have to believe that you deserve it. Otherwise, you will reject it, and even if it's just in your body language, And
then people will react to that,
and
respond to that little.
Right.
I'm not like full of self-loathing, but I have enough self-loathing, and I'm not a good enough actor to cover it up.
Yeah, because you can fake it, but only up to a certain point. And I'm not saying that like great artists who do hold a stadium don't hate themselves. They probably do, but they also believe that they deserve like all that focus, which, yeah. And I think you just have to accept if you just weren't born for that.
Do you think, when you were growing up, that's just from being kind of like, well, I wasn't into sports, and I was, the same thing with me. Like I played sports with my friends, but I certainly didn't follow any sports, and I didn't play at school. And I was, again, I was friends with popular people, but I wasn't popular.
Right. Yeah. Like I was just utterly undesired. for like I didn't kiss a girl till I was 16. That's a long time to go undesirable, right? And maybe there were people who would have along the way if I'd been like, hey, what's up? I was very shy and nervous. But I think, I wasn't loathed. No one was like, God, I hate that Mike Deni kid. I'm going to kill him. But also they just didn't seem to have a use for me. There were others that they did have a use for. It was like, oh, that's what they want. I'm not what they want. But then there were people who did, and they were weird, like me, and we like developed a sort of family, Yeah. So it's like, I do think it was all there. But also I'm remembering now that like, so the first concert I saw was either Crosby, Stills and Nash in an amphitheater or Kenny G in that same amphitheater. So one of those concerts inspired me to be a musician when I was like 9 years old, where I was like, oh yes, that's what I'd like to do. So it all did start in picturing myself in a stadium, which is ironic because now I'm like, oh, I could never do that. Like, unless I wrote Bridge Over Troubled Water, and then you just can't hide from it. But it's like something about Kenny G holding out a note for 45 minutes and just being like, behold. I was like, boy, yeah, that looks like fun. But then, it's like there was never an ability to just like go off that way. Yeah.
It is funny though, like you want to, like, Kenny G is in some way a cultural punchline. Yet he's extremely skilled. There's a comedian, Sean Torres, I think is his name, who does a bit about Guy Fieri, who, like...
I appreciate that pronunciation.
Guy Fieri.
Fieri.
Sorry. Who another cultural punchline, but he's like, but he also does all this amazing stuff for people.
Crushing it.
And the same thing, so when, like... people want to make fun of Kenny G, but then you're like, oh, yes, he is an incredible saxophonist.
What a weird thing to be, right? To be like, I am adored by an enormous like subset of the population, just happens to be in Eastern Europe, you know? Or like some in, I don't know where his fan base is, but it's like, but the zeitgeist, you know, and the youth, which everybody says you're only popular if teenagers like you, which is so silly because they're, no offense, like the least discerning people on the planet. It's like they don't know who they are, they don't know what they like, but as an artist you feel terrible if your like base is like 35 to 40 year olds. You're like, I'm failing. Yeah, like sure, like 35 to 40 year olds like me, but you know, the youth is not into it. It's very strange. But yeah, because to be Kenny G must, like, what is that like? You know that a lot of people think you're silly, but a lot of people think you're great, and you are great. It's, I don't know. I'm sure he came to peace with it. I mean, he makes the joke about himself now.
Yeah. Which
everybody loves.
But you saw either that or Crosby, Stills and Nash, and you
yes,
there was something about that when you were a kid. What?
It was very. I didn't think anything about the implications. Like I wasn't like, I want to be the center of attention. You know, I love being the center of attention, but it wasn't something that I desired when I looked at that. I was just like, oh, he's doing my favorite thing, music, and for like lots of people. And I want to do it for lots of people. You know, like I don't want to do it for just a few people. And yeah, this seems nice. Yes, I accept. I'll take the stadium show life. But then, and I actually think I retained that image until maybe after college, when I did play my first gig in a club, and it was like to 10 people, and it was horrible. And I was like, wait. And then I continued to suffer for like almost a decade, desperately trying to like play and totally rearranging my desires into realism, which is a much better place to live. But that stadium world is terrible. I feel like to be at that level, the stuff you have to maintain, all the things you have to do, it starts to have less and less to do with what you love about it.
Well, I remember Joan Rivers' documentary where she was talking about like how she's paying for her housekeeper's kid to go to college.
Right.
A, having a housekeeper, and
right.
B, like that's dedicated to your house, and B,
right.
paying for their kid, like the things that you have to do to maintain that.
Because it's very unnatural. You know, you're like a king or a queen, right? Like our famous people are our monarchs. England actually has a monarchy, and they treat them like we treat our famous people, with maybe a little more respect, but less and less as the years go by. And when you become that without the infrastructure of generations, and you have to manufacture like sycophants around you, it's very damaging to the psyche.
Do you think you also, I've been thinking about, as we've talked, your father creating his own, what exactly was he studying?
I think he was studying, well, I guess I don't know exactly, but it definitely had to do, he did a lot of things with plexiglass mazes where he would put the mother at one end and the father at the other. Which one does the pup go to?
Oh,
you know, that kind of thing. Which is really funny because my parents did get divorced. So it's sort of like, I don't think it had anything to do with that because it happened after I went to college. But it is really funny to think of, like in a Wes Anderson film, of the husband being like, "Which one does the child go to?" But I think he was just interested in very simple dynamics in animals, and then I imagined to apply them to adults. But we never talked about the specifics of it. But so he would build that maze. He would build an elaborate plexiglass maze, and then he would also build like a machine to clock the data, like an analog machine that looked like an old telephone operator thing. He was like a computer wizard, so he would design programs to run the experiments autonomously and stuff. Cool guy.
So you have in your life too, you have this example of someone just creating things for themselves.
Right.
Again, you said he wasn't even publishing after some point. So just the sheer love of this discipline.
Right, because that's the joy, right? That's why we do it. Is that spark when you know you've written something like fantastic? You're just like, oh my God! Like I just reached into the heavens and pulled back a tiny little ember, you know. And then you're like, and then I actually like was able to assemble kindling, and now that ember is a fire I can show other people. It's a heaven's fire, you know. So I think none of the adulation feels good at all. The thing that feels best is when you're alone in the dark, you know, like making the song, and you experience all your triumph alone. Like you're just like, your chest swells and you're just like, oh my God. And sometimes you cry, right? Like I cry often when I break through the clouds, because it's just this release of all the pressures of my life of desiring to be great. And when that falls away, it sometimes is just so moving that I'll just like cry for like a couple seconds, and I'll be like, wow, this is crazy. But yeah, it's those moments that are for you, you know, and that's not what other people appreciate about them, you know. It's like, I imagine if he did something or discovered something fascinating, he would get that same sort of rise, you know. Yeah, so it is for others, but the reason we do it is really and it's probably an endorphin thing, and so it's a bit of maybe an addiction to an endorphin release.
Yeah, it's hoping there's something in you that makes you feel like that will also inspire others to feel something.
Right, which is interesting, right? It's like, why include other people? Why is that a factor? You've had the joy. The endorphins are good, you know, like. What is it about? Like, I desperately want humanity to derive endless joy from my creations.
Yeah.
I want that so badly. You know, like it keeps me up at night sometimes. But what does that have to do with it? I don't know that it's as simple as I was a loser in high school and I want to be cool, you know? I think it has something to do more existentially with, I don't feel that I have a place in existence. Like, I do not understand what's happening, and I don't know why I'm here, who I am, what this is. But if I can positively affect all the other people who are wandering around here lost, then, you know, that's better than nothing, right?
100%. There's this, I think about this all the time, about like we are trapped in our head, this Cartesian thing. We're always trapped, and we're always at the same time being trapped, trying to like connect with someone else, and and the existential status is that we never will, because it's impossible. Right. There's no telepathy. There's no way to ever get outside of our own heads into someone else. And maybe the closest thing is that creation.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Maybe.
I think that's especially true for music, because if you think, like, no one speaks the same language as another person, because each of our thoughts are so individual, and there's no way to express your feelings truly. However, music is a language that everyone understands. Everyone. You know, it's like, and it is a language. You can read it and you can write it. And then, so that's a way, if you translate your unintelligible thoughts to something universal, that's sort of a way to get people to understand, at least on a common ground, you know? But it's interesting, you go to such lengths to show people who you are, and you don't even really know. but it feels so good. Like that moment of connection, even in conversation, or like maybe second date where you're like, oh my God, really? Oh my God, you too? Oh my God. That feels unbelievable.
When this happens maybe once or twice a week, Naomi and I will say something at the exact same time, the same thing at the same time. And it just like, it's the moment we're connected the most.
Yeah.
In that like, oh, the same thought hit us at the exact same time. And we express it the exact same.
Yeah.
That
and
kind
just
of like.
make love on the kitchen floor.
Oh my God. This has been such a pleasure.
Yeah, man. For me too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming over. Thank you for talking. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye. Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye.